Supreme Admiral Varric stood on the bridge of the Xelari Dominion's unyielding wrath, the largest and most advanced warship in the Empire's armada. The sight before him was laughable, an insignificant blue-green world populated by a species that had barely scratched the surface of interstellar travel. The invasion had been a formality, a necessity to remind the lesser species of their place in the galaxy. Earth, despite its technological backwardness, had refused to submit to Xelari rule. The humans had been given one chance to surrender peacefully. They had, unsurprisingly, refused. Varric had ordered the invasion with all the enthusiasm of a man signing a routine document. He didn't expect a fight, merely an example to be made. "Deploy the shock troops," Varric said with a dismissive wave of his clawed hand. "Subjugate the local military first, then their governing bodies. No need for drawn-out conflict." "At once, Supreme Admiral," his second-in-command, Commander Zelkor, affirmed. The massive fleet hovered over Earth's orbit, casting ominous shadows over continents below. Dropships detached from the capital vessels, streaking through the atmosphere like falling stars. The broadcast to Earth's leaders went out in all known human languages. "Surrender, and your species will be spared. Resist, and you will cease to exist." There was no response. Varric chuckled to himself. Typical. The primitives were likely scrambling in fear. Then his comms officer spoke, voice tight with confusion. "Sir, we just lost contact with the first wave." Varric turned, frowning. "What do you mean, lost contact?" "Their signals cut out, sir. Completely. No distress calls, no jamming interference, just gone." A flicker of irritation crossed Varric's features. "Then send the second wave. If the first was eliminated, we should at least detect weapons signatures or impact craters." "Yes, sir." More dropships launched, more warships descended, and again, just as they entered Earth's lower atmosphere, they vanished. No explosions, no wreckage, no signs of a battle, just silence. A chill ran through the bridge crew as a message suddenly came through the command channel. A simple, quiet voice spoke in perfect Xelari, devoid of emotion. "You shouldn't have come here." Varric's reptilian fingers curled into a fist. "Who is this?" No response. "Commander Zelkor, deploy a full scouting fleet. I want every inch of that planet scanned. I want to know what we're dealing with." The Xelari warships descended. The most advanced scanning arrays in the Dominion swept over the surface of Earth, and they found nothing. No weapon signatures, no orbital defenses, no planetary shields, just a technologically inferior species going about its daily business. Yet something had erased entire battalions of Xelari warriors. Varric gritted his teeth. "Fire on their cities." His weapons officer hesitated. "Supreme Admiral, with all due respect." "What if they retaliate?" Varric snarled. "With what?" "We have no evidence they have the technology to fight us." But the bridge crew's fear was palpable. Something about this invasion felt wrong. Still, orders were orders. The Xelari fleet fired. Plasma cannons, orbital mass drivers, city-destroying weapons rained fire upon Earth. And nothing. No impacts. No explosions. The weapons fired. They registered as launched. They simply never arrived. Varric's claws dug into the armrest of his command chair. His crew stared in horror at their displays, whispering amongst themselves. Impossible. Where did the payload go? It's like the shots never existed. Then another message came through. This time, the voice was colder. "You shouldn't have done that." And just like that, ships in orbit began vanishing, not destroyed, not disabled, just gone. One by one, entire battleships blinked out of existence, as if they had never been there at all. Panic overtook the bridge. "Sir, the Retribution just disappeared." "The Devourer is—" "No, wait, it's gone. Half our fleet is missing. There's no wreckage, no explosions, they're just gone." Varric's mind raced. No species in the galaxy had ever demonstrated a capability like this. No technology could erase matter from existence without a trace. "Pull back," he barked, his voice losing its authority. Regroup. Send a distress signal to the High Dominion Council. We need reinforcements. The comms officer turned pale. Sir, we've lost contact with the council. Varek's blood ran cold. The entire council? All channels are dead. Our colonies, our outposts, they're going dark one by one. Varek stared at the projection of their empire, worlds disappearing in real time. No explosions, no distress calls, no battles, just silence. And then, one last message appeared on the main display, written in perfect Xelari script. It was short, simple. We tried to warn you. Varek finally felt fear. True, primal fear. Because whatever humanity had done, it hadn't just stopped the invasion. It had begun erasing the Xelari from existence, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Supreme Admiral Varek stood motionless on the bridge of the unyielding Wrath, staring at the blinking holographic projection of the Xelari Dominion. It was disappearing before his eyes. Entire systems were vanishing from their records. Planets that had been the core of the Dominion for centuries were now blank, as if they had never existed. The crew whispered in hushed, panicked voices. The ship's comms officer turned to Varek, their scaled face pale. Sir, we're the last fleet in contact with command. Varek turned slowly, his voice hollow. What do you mean? The officer gulped. Every other fleet, every other command center, the High Dominion Council itself, they're all gone. A deathly silence filled the bridge. Commander Zelkor took a hesitant step forward. Sir, I don't understand. Even if humanity had some unknown weapon, they can't just erase entire planets. There are no explosions, no wreckage, no transmissions, just nothing. Varek clenched his fists. Then explain to me where they went. No one had an answer. Across the ship, Xelari engineers and scientists scrambled to find a reason for the disappearances. One scientist, a veteran researcher named Liraxa, stood in the ship's intelligence sector, staring at the latest sensor reports. The data made no sense. Admiral, Liraxa said when Varek stormed into the lab, I think I know why our forces are vanishing. Varek loomed over her, his patience thin. Then explain. Liraxa hesitated, then displayed a distorted energy reading from Earth's orbit. This is unlike anything in known physics. Our weapons didn't just miss their targets, Admiral. They ceased to exist the moment they reached a certain threshold. Varek frowned. A planetary shield? Liraxa shook her head. No, shields deflect or absorb. This isn't a defense mechanism. She gestured to another reading. Something is rewriting reality itself. Varek's scaled brow furrowed. That's impossible. Liraxa gave a humorless laugh. And yet our fleets are disappearing. She pulled up the only surviving data from a long-range probe before it, too, vanished. The screen showed distorted visuals, Xelari warships vanishing into thin air as something in space twisted, like a fold in reality itself. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense, Liraxa whispered. Humanity has found a way to erase things from existence. Varek ordered a scouting vessel to one of the silent colonies. They had to retrieve survivors. They had to find proof that something remained. A Xelari warship approached one of their industrial worlds, Vile Tor, a thriving colony of over 1 billion Xelari just hours before. They scanned the planet. No life signs, no structures, just empty land. It wasn't destroyed. It wasn't in ruins. It was pristine, untouched, as if nothing had ever been built there. No cities, no roads, no satellites orbiting above. The entire colony had been rewritten into nothingness. And in the center of the capital, where the ruling Xelari government once stood, was a message. A single phrase, carved into the surface of the planet itself, written in their own language. We warned you. Back on the unyielding Wrath, the crew was on the verge of open panic. This can't be happening, Zelkor muttered. We are the Dominion. We have ruled the stars for centuries. One officer stood frozen at their console, staring at the latest update from their fleet's tracking systems. Sir, the officer whispered, their voice breaking. The homeworld just went dark. Varric turned sharply. What? The capital world, Xel Prime, the mother world of our species. The officer gulped, their eyes full of terror. It's gone. Varric rushed to the command console. He entered the override codes himself, demanding a real-time display of their home system. Nothing. Not a destroyed planet. Not a war-torn battlefield. Just empty space. As if the Xelari homeworld had never been there at all. A new transmission appeared on the main display. It wasn't a distress signal. It wasn't an enemy ultimatum. It was human. A single figure, silhouetted against a red-lit room, their expression unreadable. The voice was calm. You started this. The bridge crew held their breath. Now we finish it. Then the message cut out. A moment later, the unyielding wrath began losing pieces of itself. A section of the left wing blinked out of existence. Crew members stationed there vanished with it. No screams, no alarms, just gone. One by one, other sections of the ship followed. The engine room, the lower decks, the entire weapons system. Varric looked around wildly, his crew staring back at him, horror in their eyes. Then, darkness. Silence. Somewhere, in the void of space where the unyielding wrath once floated, a single faint distress beacon pulsed weakly. It carried the final transmission of Supreme Admiral Varric. A single sentence, his voice raw with terror. Humanity, what are you? And the last message from Earth, the last remnant of a species that had warned the galaxy not to cross them, echoed through the cold void. We tried to warn you. Across the remnants of the Xelari Dominion, those who remained received the same horrifying reality. Everything was vanishing. Entire fleets, entire colonies, and now the homeworld itself. Inside what remained of the Dominion's high command, Grand Strategist Tarl stood frozen as he watched Xel Prime, their very capital, disappear piece by piece. Cities, government buildings, military academies, one by one, they simply blinked out of existence. The planet itself was still there, but everything the Xelari had built upon it was gone. The last stronghold of their people was reduced to a barren, untouched world, as if civilization had never touched it. And then, without a single explosion or warning, Xel Prime vanished too. There was no debris, no destroyed fragments of a once great world. The planet simply ceased to exist. And for the first time in Xelari history, the last remaining Dominion leaders had no empire left to command. Only silence, and a final transmission from humanity. You wanted war. Now you have oblivion. The survivors of the fleet, those lucky enough to escape the initial erasure, scrambled to regroup in the outer fringes of known space. There were no more high-ranking officials left. The Xelari Dominion no longer existed. Only broken remnants remained, drifting in a galaxy that no longer recognized them. We need answers, one of the remaining officers, Commander Velcor, muttered in the dimly lit command center of an old supply outpost. He turned to the few surviving intelligence operatives. Tell me what you've learned about Earth's weapon. What did they do to us? A frazzled, exhausted scientist swallowed hard and pulled up the last known reports from before the fleets vanished. It's not a weapon. At least, not in the way we understand them, she said hesitantly. Velcor narrowed his eyes. Explain. The scientist took a deep breath. Humanity has discovered something far worse than planetary destruction. They didn't just fire superweapons. They didn't deploy fleets. She hesitated before continuing. They rewrote reality. Velcor stiffened. That's impossible. She pointed to the last recorded data logs. And yet, the Dominion is gone. You tell me how else that happened. She zoomed in on one of the last sensor readings taken before Xel Prime vanished. Look here, at the gravitational distortions near Earth. Velcor leaned in, his stomach twisting. Space itself was folding, like a sheet of fabric being rewritten over an old design. The scientist continued in a shaky voice. Humanity didn't just create a weapon. They found something, a force, a law of the universe itself, and they learned how to wield it. They've erased the Xelari not just physically, but conceptually. The Dominion never existed as far as the galaxy is concerned. Velcor clenched his jaw. What do you mean? The scientist's eyes were hollow. We just tried sending a distress call to our old allies. And? She looked up at him. They don't remember us. Velcor felt a cold sweat run down his back. That's impossible. The scientist trembled. Not if humanity rewrote history. Desperate to understand what was happening, the remaining Xelari turned to an old, abandoned Dominion research outpost. If humanity had rewritten reality, perhaps they could find a way to undo it. But when they arrived, they found something waiting for them. A message, etched into the walls of the outpost in flawless Xelari script. "Stop running." Velcor staggered back. How did they? No one had set foot in this facility in years. And yet, the message was fresh, as if humanity knew they would come here. The last scientist among them whispered, voice breaking. "They can see us." Velcor turned sharply. "What do you mean?" The scientist swallowed. "They see us, Commander. They know exactly where we are. Every thought, every move. They aren't just erasing us, they're watching." The lights flickered, and then another message appeared on the display screen, typing itself in real time. "You wanted war." The screen flickered again. "Now you have oblivion." The last Xelari forces tried to flee beyond known space. They plotted courses to the edges of the galaxy, hoping to find a way to escape Earth's reach. But one by one, their ships disappeared. Not from battle, not from sabotage. They simply ceased to exist. Entire starships with thousands of crew members, gone, until only a single vessel remained. Velcor, standing alone on the bridge, gritted his teeth as he watched the last remnants of his species vanish into nothing. A transmission appeared on his console. The last message from humanity. It was a video. A single human stood in a ruined city, dust swirling around them. They looked directly into the camera. They did not smile. They did not gloat. They simply said, "We tried to warn you." And then Velcor felt it. An unseen force pulling at his very existence. A weightless void swallowing his body, his thoughts, his history. And as the last Xelari commander faded from reality, his final thought was not of victory, nor defiance, only regret. And then, nothing. Across the galaxy, where the mighty Xelari Dominion once ruled, there was only silence. Their fleets, their cities, their history, all gone. But the galaxy itself remained unchanged. No power struggles to fill the void. No empires moving to claim former Xelari space. Because to the rest of the universe, the Xelari had never existed at all. Their name was not spoken. Their records were absent. No species mourned their loss. No allies sought them. It was as if reality itself had corrected their mistake. But in the quiet, unassuming corners of the galaxy, a handful of scholars, those who had taken detailed records of interstellar civilizations, felt something was wrong. Because some records were missing, entire gaps in history, no explanations, just blank spaces where something should have been. And among the silent ruins of abandoned research stations, one message had been left behind, a message no one could explain. "We tried to warn you." Somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, a single vessel drifted aimlessly. A Xelari warship, the only Xelari warship. Its sole occupant, Velcor, the last of his species. He did not know how he had survived. He did not know why he had survived. But he was alone, and he was afraid. His mind felt fragmented, his memories jagged, as if he was not supposed to exist either. His ship's databases had been wiped, no records of his homeworld, no records of the Dominion, just him. And then, as he stared into the cold void of space, something changed. A transmission appeared on his console. Not from his own ship, not from a source he could track. It was from Earth. Velcor hesitated before opening it, and there, once again, was the human from the last message. Their face was emotionless, not hateful, not cruel, just watching. And then they spoke. "Why are you still here?" Velcor felt his entire body freeze, his breath caught. "You were not supposed to remain." The ship shook violently, alarms blared, and in that moment, Velcor understood. They had spared him, not out of mercy, not out of kindness, but because they wanted him to understand that they could have erased him too. And with that, the screen flickered. The human's face disappeared, and a new message replaced it. One last message. Run. Elsewhere, deep within the archives of an independent research station, a lone scientist named Kira Voss pieced together something she was never meant to see. She had spent years studying anomalies, forgotten histories, unexplained disappearances. And now, before her, the answer was laid bare. Earth. The one species no empire had ever truly conquered. The one species that had always adapted. The species that had, against all logic, wiped out an empire without firing a single conventional shot. Kira's hands trembled as she translated an ancient fragment she had uncovered in the station's oldest records. It was a text older than the Dominion, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. A warning about Earth. Her voice was barely a whisper as she read it aloud. They have done this before. The screen before her flickered. A system warning. The station's databases were being overwritten. Something was watching her. She tried to pull back the data, to copy what she had found, but it was already gone. Then, on the screen, one last phrase appeared. Forget this. The system powered down, and Kira Voss, the only one who had seen the truth, forgot. Somewhere in the galaxy, Velcor's ship drifted into the unknown, alone, forgotten, with only one lingering question echoing in his fading mind. What are humans? And across the cold, dark void of space, Earth remained silent, waiting, watching, and ready to be forgotten. There was no record of Xel Prime, no ruins, no debris, no indication that an entire species had once ruled from its surface. The planet itself was gone. Where it had once existed, there was only an empty sector of space. No gravitational disturbances, no asteroid belts, not even dust. It was as though nothing had ever been there. And for the rest of the galaxy, that was the truth. The Xelari Dominion had never existed. The wars they fought, the species they conquered, none of it had ever happened. Their ships had never flown, their empire had never risen. They had been erased, and no one even remembered them. No one except Velcor, the last Xelari, drifting through the void, and utterly alone. Velcor sat on the bridge of his ship, staring at the empty star charts. His hands shook. His mind ached. He was alive, but he wasn't supposed to be. Every time he tried to speak the name of his species, his throat closed. The words would not come. Every time he tried to recall his homeworld, his memory refused to hold on to the details. It was slipping away, bit by bit, like something was rewriting his very existence in real time. And then, his ship's long-range sensors picked up movement. Something was following him. Not an enemy fleet, not a known species, not anything that should have been possible. But it was there, waiting, watching. Velcor gritted his teeth, gripping the controls of his ship. He had no home left, no people, no future. But if he was still alive, then he had one last mission: to find the truth about what happened, to learn what Earth really was, to make humanity answer for what they had done. But then, a transmission came through. No coordinates, no traceable origin, just a single message appearing on his screen. You were warned. His blood ran cold. Velcor turned sharply, as if expecting someone, something, to be standing behind him. But he was alone. Yet, the feeling remained. the weight of unseen eyes, the realization that he was being allowed to remain, not out of mercy, not out of kindness, but so that he would know that if humanity ever decided to finish the job, there would be nothing he could do to stop them. And then, one final transmission appeared on his screen, a recording of Earth, ruined cities, smoke and ash drifting through the wind, and a single human standing amidst the devastation, the same human who had spoken to him before. Their face was unreadable, their voice calm. Run. Velkor didn't hesitate. He slammed his ship's controls, engaging the hyperdrive, fleeing into the deepest, most unknown parts of the galaxy. He did not know where he was going. He only knew one thing. He would never return. Not to Earth, not to anywhere near human space. Because now, he finally understood. Humanity did not conquer. Humanity did not win wars. Humanity simply erased its threats from existence. And the only reason he was still here was because they wanted him to remember. Decades passed. The galaxy continued as it always had. Wars broke out. Empires rose and fell. Alliances were formed and broken. But Earth remained silent. No empire dared invade. No fleet dared approach. And no one remembered why. Only one relic remained, hidden in the void of space, untouched, unclaimed. A single, ruined satellite, drifting in the cold. And upon its surface, carved deep into the metal, were the last known words of a species that no longer existed. A warning to those who might repeat their mistake. A message left by a species that had crossed a line they could never return from. 4 simple words. We tried to warn you.